The silence in Alara's city apartment was a physical thing. It had weight and texture. It was the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sigh of traffic 6 floors down, and the absolute absence of another breath. This was the silence of being alone. She had curated this life meticulously. The minimalist furniture, the single wine glass drying in the rack, the neatly made bed with one side perpetually untouched. It was a life of control, of order, a stark contrast to the chaotic, fabric-strewn warmth of her mother's house. She had called it independence. She had called it strength. But after the missed promotion and the quiet, mutual breakup with Mark, the words felt hollow. The silence didn't feel peaceful anymore, it felt accusing. She was not just alone, she was lonely. The distinction was a canyon inside her. One was a circumstance she had chosen. The other was a void she didn't know how to fill. A text message glowed on her phone. It was from her mother, Maeve. A simple photo of the unfinished quilt spread on the sewing room floor. The caption read, "It misses your stitches." Alara's throat tightened. She looked around her pristine, silent apartment. A life that looked perfect in a magazine spread, but felt like a waiting room. Without allowing herself to overthink it, she opened a travel website, booked a one-way train ticket, and began to pack. The aloneness felt different at her mother's house. It wasn't silent. It was filled with the rustle of leaves in the garden, the rhythmic whir of the sewing machine, the soft crackle of the radio in the kitchen. Here, being alone didn't feel like isolation, it felt like space. And in that space, Alara began to hear herself again. While Maeve was at the grocery store, Alara wandered into the sewing room. Her eyes fell on a small, lacquered box on a high shelf she remembered from childhood, always off limits. A sudden, reckless curiosity took hold. She took it down. Inside weren't diamonds or old love letters, but fragments of a life, a dried corsage from a long-forgotten dance, a tarnished silver baby spoon, and at the bottom, a stack of black and white photographs of a young woman she barely recognized. It was Maeve at 20, sitting on a suitcase at a train station, her face a mixture of terror and exhilarating hope. On the back, in faded ink, it read Portland 1972. On my own later, when Maeve returned. Alara showed her the box, her face flushed with guilt. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." Maeve simply smiled, a little sadly. She took the photograph. "I was alone then, too. Scared out of my wits. I'd left my family, my town, everything I knew. I thought being strong meant never looking back." "What happened?" Alara asked, her voice a whisper. "I met your father. I built a life. I had you." Maeve traced the image of her younger self. "But for a long time, I was so busy building, that I forgot the girl in this picture. The one who was brave enough to be lonely, because she knew what she wanted. I think I started this quilt, to find all the pieces of myself I'd left behind in the rush to not be alone anymore." The revelation was a seismic shift. Alara had always seen her mother as complete, a finished product. She had never imagined her as a young woman, alone and terrified on a train platform, just as she felt now. Their stitching sessions became a confession. Alara spoke of the pressure to be perpetually okay, The shame of feeling lonely in a city of millions. The fear that she was failing at adulthood. Maeve spoke of the loneliness of early motherhood. The quiet grief of losing her husband. The struggle to maintain a brave face for her children. They were two alone women, mother and daughter, discovering that their solitary experiences were not unique, but shared. The quilt became their language. A jagged red patch was the anger Elara felt after her breakup. A soft, gray flannel was the comfort of her mother's quiet understanding. They weren't just repairing a blanket. They were reassembling themselves, together, yet honoring the solitary journeys that had defined them. Elara stood on the train platform a month later, her suitcase heavier. The finished quilt was inside, a tangible weight of love and history. Maeve held her face in her hands, her thumbs wiping away tears that Elara didn't try to hide. "You don't have to go back to the silence," Maeve said softly. "I know," Elara replied. "But I'm not going back to the same silence." The train ride home was different. She didn't stare blankly out the window, dreading the empty apartment. She unfolded the quilt and spread it over her lap. Passengers glanced over and smiled at the vibrant, chaotic tapestry. When she pushed open the door to her apartment, the silence was there. But it was different. It was just silence now, not a judgment. It was space. Her space. She didn't put the quilt in a closet or a chest. She spread it on her bed, the centerpiece of the room. The bold, clashing patterns of her family's history looked entirely out of place against the minimalist gray walls. And that was precisely why it belonged. That night, as she lay under its weight, she felt the truth settle into her bones. Being alone was not the opposite of being loved. It was not a failure. It was a room one must learn to live in. And to do that, you had to furnish it with the whole of yourself. The past, the present, the scars, and the strengths. She picked up her phone and took a picture of the quilt on her bed, with the city lights twinkling outside her window. She sent it to her mother. The caption was simple: "The room is quiet, but I am not alone."